Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tech Trailblazers Judges on Fire podcast. And I'm delighted that today I'm joined with Joe Baguley, who's the EMEA CTO for VMware and is a long-standing supporter and judge at the Tech Trailblazers. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Rose. It's lovely to be talking to you again.
Yeah, it's been a little while. The last time I think we spoke and it was recorded, I think, was for the diversity panel that you did with Jackie and Nima last year. So that was at the beginning of all this crazy, challenging times that we've been experiencing. So obviously people may well be aware of you already, Joe, but I thought it'd be great just if we did a bit of a recap of, who is Joe and how did he get here from a tech career perspective?
Yeah, So my name's Joe Baguley. I'm never arrogant enough to assume everyone knows who I am. As you said earlier, I'm Vice President and Chief Technology Officer here at VMware, covering Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I've been at VMware now for 10 years this year. Prior to that, I was at a company called Quest Software for 10 years, which we kind of took from not so big to rather big and then sold it to Dell. And then for the 10 years prior to that, I cut my teeth in enterprise IT, everything from starting at HP on a help desk, playing with all things like Unix and Linux and Windows and Novell networks and doing all the stuff like going out and I worked for various consultancies and other different bits and pieces, going out, deploying things in large enterprises, traveling all over the place. So so I spent the sort of first 10 years of my life cutting my teeth in literally under the desks of enterprise IT and in the data centers of enterprise IT. And then the last 20 years, I've been building software and talking to the people actually doing enterprise IT, really. Best way to put it.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And obviously within the awards, we have a variety of categories, and you have a very wide and broad and deep knowledge of IT, but you do tend to specialise in a number of categories for us. Do you want to just give us an overview of those, and also perhaps have a chat about what you think you're seeing as hot or innovative in that space at the moment?
Wow. Yeah, big question. So I tend to cover the cloud area as it was traditionally called, and now the areas are associated with that. So things like networking, innovative IT, all those kind of things. And, more sort of IoT edge stuff now too, if I'm honest with you. And then moving up the stack, certainly looking more around the application space as well. So I'm looking at things not just infrastructure and cloudy, but much higher up in terms of applications and delivery and also end user computing. I mean, my role at VMware covers everything from, the real guts of a data center where I'm working on sustainability standards with the European Union, all the way through applications, the network, SASE, SD-WAN, down to the actual end user devices. So it covers the full remit. So really across the board is the short answer of areas that I'm looking at. In terms of exciting hot areas in that space, I think really the biggest one for me now is a realization in our industry that everything's not going to end up in one cloud. More importantly, everything's not going to end up in the cloud. What we're now looking at is applications that are distributed, complex, distributed and scaled. So a lot of people thought that cloud was about taking what I did before and just doing it somewhere else in the cloud, so to speak. Maybe doing it slightly differently. Maybe I'm going to cloud native it and do it in a cloud, but ultimately that's it. Whereas actually what we're now seeing is people are building applications which have bits in one or more clouds, as well as bits in some edge devices, as well as applications in people's hands. And, so what's going on there is people as an industry now looks once again at distributed stuff. So there's a lot of things going on in distributed analytics, distributed databases, distributed machine learning. Federated is another word that's coming up along. You federated machine learning, federated analytics. You're seeing a lot in the space around service mesh and all those kind of things. So to be fair, it's much more in that sort of how people are now building, scaling, running, managing, operating massive applications that are highly distributed and highly complex. And there's lots of moving parts in there. So it's quite exciting. It's never going to settle down, and there's never one winner either. So there's always, and when you've got something that big and that expansive, I suppose, as a landscape, there's always so many small chinks for someone to come in and make a difference, I think, as well, which is where it's exciting for me, because something like Tech Trailblazers, I can't claim to know that whole landscape perfectly. So something like Tech Trailblazers gives me a chance to spot what's popping up in the gaps and what the cool stuff is. So yeah, I suppose that's really how I look at it.
Yeah. Well, you've been with us right from the beginning. In fact, we spoke about everything even before the Tech Trailblazers existed. Way
I
back
remember
then.
that conversation, Rose. I remember where it was. It was at Excel Centre. I remember it was a conference. I don't know what the conference was. And you and I stood outside having a cigarette, which dates it because I've not smoked for many, many years as well. So, yeah. And then we discussed the concept of something like this. And here we are, 10 years later now, is it?
Yeah, we're in our 10th edition. So, some of your pearls of wisdom will hopefully get into our celebratory ebook, Tech Trailblazers at 10. I know, very exciting stuff. So from that perspective, what do you tend to, I think it's very part of what you've just said kind of answers the next question is why do you do it? Which is that obviously you specialize, although you have a very big view with your role, but it seems to give you insights into areas that perhaps you wouldn't get a chance to look at, with your day job, so to speak. Are there any reasons you get involved with things like this?
Well, so, what am I looking? The reasons I say is it broadens my outlook. It's another way for me to keep in touch with what's going on, and so even more so nowadays, because I used to go and hang around at meetups like Cloud Camp, etc. As you well know, we bump into them a lot of these, and with that not happening so much because of the way we're living, it's even more important that I'm getting sort of visibility to those things here. I think the other thing to understand is when you say sort of what am I looking for in an entry, so to speak, is I'm looking for, there's two real things, and I've thought about this a lot recently, discussed it with some of my colleagues here at VMware, because we're famous at VMware for innovation. And we've been trying to look internally and externally and asking questions, and Kit and others have been asking this, what is innovation? And it's really interesting because there's a difference between invention and innovation. Invention is having a really cool idea. Innovation is actually bringing that idea to market and to sort of mass adoption, I suppose, really, or having the vision of how that would happen. As you know, I'm very interested in sustainability and electric cars and stuff. And I'm bored of reading the news story about the next big battery killer that's going to be the next big battery for electric cars. And it's someone somewhere has had an idea and managed to get something to work in a very obscure corner of a lab. And they go, well, we believe this could scale up. You're like, well, that's invention. That's not innovation. So innovation is someone who's gone, okay, I've taken some concept, some thought about what we could do, but I've actually put it into practice. But more importantly, I've thought about more than just the technical side of things. It's how do I scale this? How do I deploy this? How do I get people to accept it? So, really what am I looking for in an entry is not just pure invention, because I see thousands of those every day. What I'm looking for more is, okay, I want invention with that innovation piece. I want it where you say, okay, I've got this invention, but here's exactly how we can make this into a real thing. And that's really important to me. And the more evidence you can come to us with, I'm not saying come to us with a fully fledged, huge customer base, because that's not what this is about, but at least a vision on that you've thought that through, I think is the point.
So very much not just the pure aspect of it, but the applied aspect of it.
Yeah, I definitely. I think I remember I said in a previous example, I think in an interview with you guys about frying pans. It's like there's I've seen hundreds of frying pans, right? And so if you're going to come with me with a new inventive frying pan, I'm probably not going to get it. But if you show me some new amazing food that I'm going to eat that I could never cook without this frying pan, I might be a little bit more interested. So it's almost like it's the application of it. It's how does it actually affect and change? And to be fair, that sort of sits a lot into what the role of a CTO or someone like myself is when talking to customers. Is the customer can look at products all day. It's only when you walk in and go, okay, fine, well, let me apply these products to your environment. Let me show you how we can change your world using these products. That's when people start to, they make that leap and they get that. So make it easy for us judges. tell us, do it like we do for when we're selling to customers. We make it easy for them to understand how it applies to them. Make it easy for us too.
Yeah. So give you the why, not just the what.
Definitely.
Brilliant. So why would you encourage innovative new companies? Because it's a lot of effort. We don't just ask them for a couple of things. We do ask for, it's not reams of stuff, but we do ask them for some, fairly thought through answers to condense down into what they, can prove around innovation and other aspects of their business and their technology. Why should they bother?
I've always said on this one, why not, right? It's such a minimal amount of effort to put your entry in for something like this. It's not a lot of effort, really. There's other award schemes that require you to pay money and do jump through hoops backwards and all this other kind of stuff that you would balk at. I think for tech trailblazers, why wouldn't you? There's not an awful lot of time and effort, and more importantly, there's a huge deal that you get back. Just the exposure to the judges seeing your entry is a good start. People that move in the right circles, and more importantly, I think it's the networks, the people that you'll meet, and the exposure you'll get is one of those things as well. So look at it as, it's not just marketing. It's not just I can get a badge to put on my website that we won Tech Trailblazers. It's about being part of that process, the exposure that you get as part of that process to the people that are involved in that process. Some of the other judges are really quite impressive, if you know what I mean. So even just that alone is good in itself. So I think, what's the worst that can happen? I think is the way you could look at this, really, and it's not bad.
Yeah, well, the worst that can happen is you win and you have to talk to me because I'll go and interview your CEO. So,
well, yeah, that's pretty bad. Yeah, I can understand from experience.
You don't want to be doing stuff like that.
Terrible deal. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, I just to clarify, there is a small entry fee, but yes, compared with some of the other awards, and for fire starters and for female and male, there aren't. But I think what you're saying is really, give it a shot. And, there's potentially great benefits, even if you don't win and even if you're not shortlisted.
Well, yeah, and I think the point we discussed at the very start of that Tech Trailblazers was that we didn't want this to be something to sell tickets to a dinner, which is what 99% of other award schemes are about, selling tickets to a dinner, right? This is the opposite of that. We wanted to create the antithesis of that, an actual award scheme where it's just not about selling tickets to a dinner. It's about actually making a difference. Really important.
And this year it's been we've been ahead of the curve somewhat because there have been no awards. So that business model did kind of fall on its head somewhat for a number of people, which, I do like to think of myself as innovative, but I wasn't anticipating that a pandemic would be the reason for being such an innovative awards organizer. I'm going to take us on to a topic which I know we discussed, and we actually discussed in the panel that we last spoke on when we talked about diversity. But I'm wondering whether now you see, post everything that's been going on over the last year and, the renewed conversation, well, not renewed because it's never stopped, the conversation around diversity. And, I know that you've...
Yeah, so there's a couple of things in that space, and really, as you know, diversity has always been something very important to me. We've discussed this quite a lot at length.
Yeah.
And not just because I'm the father of two daughters, but it's something that's always stood out to me since the start for various other reasons why I consider myself diverse. But there's a couple of increased focuses. The first is there's a broader focus. I've written a couple of articles recently on this, on ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance. And so this is from corporates sort of moving beyond the lip service to corporate, good, and actually, realizing that having a strategy around environmental, social, and governance is fundamentally important to getting investors even, so that's important. And that then trickles down because part of that sort of ESG space is around diversity, equity, and trust, I suppose. So people are looking for, ethical, good in ESG managed companies. But to do that, they're realizing that a key part of that is a company that does take what we now call DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, to its core. And that's really important. And I think what I've seen over the last 10 years is a maturity in our market, and particularly in tech, more so than I think any other industry, in understanding the challenges around diversity, but more importantly, the opportunities around diversity. And it's important to understand that, diversity and equity and inclusion are very different things, and they need to be dealt with differently, but understood by all. Diversity is obviously having diverse talent pool and diverse people doing the job. Equity is about making sure that everyone has the chance to show their best at equal or has an equal chance to take part, I suppose. And inclusion is making sure that everyone feels included and wants to take part, I suppose. So, diversity is inviting everyone to the party. That's great. Inclusion is everyone feeling like they can go on the dance floor and have a dance. That's kind of the difference. I've always put diversity and inclusion. And equity is another one that I don't think people understand. Equity is not about giving everyone the same. It's about giving some people more than others so they can all achieve the same. A great way to put this is there's a picture that I've always seen, which I love, is of three different people standing to watch a football game, and they've got three boxes, and they give one box to everyone, and of course everyone's just one box higher, but still, even then, not everyone can see over the bar and see into the football game. Whereas obviously the tallest person doesn't get a box, and the shortest person gets two boxes. That's equity, right? Is that everyone is you leveling playing fields. So for me, that's what DEI means. It's about making sure that everyone can come, everyone feels like they can take part, and everyone can take part on a level playing field. And that's been at the core of what we do at VMware. And it's been shown that when you do that, and it's been proven, in myriad times, that diversity improves in performance of teams. It improves the performance of companies. And so, people are now actively looking at DEI as a way to improve the performance of their company. Also, at the same time, it ends up being a better and nicer place to work. It ends up being a better way to attract talent, and there's no real downsides to it. And it's just difficult trying to persuade people that this is the way forward. And everyone seems to think it's some politically correct thing or everything else. It's not. It's just the right thing to do, and it's how things should be.
Yeah, no, it's an important part of that, and there's lots of challenges still within that, as I'm sure you'll see both, in your personal life and in your professional life, because there's still a way to go. Now, there is another element of this, and this is something we haven't talked about, but I would like to talk about it because I think it'd be kind of an interesting area. Because I think if we look at, there has been a lot of discussion within the startup world about failing fast. So taking things, testing them out, seeing if they're a goer or not. How have you experienced this type of stuff yourself, either in your career or in the things that you've been working on?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, fail fast, fail off, and all these different bits and pieces. I think the biggest barrier to failing fast is a cultural barrier within organizations, and especially the larger an organization it gets, the more risk averse they become, the more bureaucratic they become. So if you want to take my experience from this, I've seen fast failure, or the best way to put fast failure is not failing fast. It's more a willingness to take risks and willingness to take multiple bets is the best way to put about it. The willingness to invest in something and realize that it might not come off, but not penalize anyone for that. I think that's the real thing. So in a small startup, you can try several different things, and the only people that lose out is you, I suppose, really, in that, in your time and effort. I think the problem is the larger an organization becomes, you get to a very big enterprise. People, don't want to be the person that was known as that worked for 6 months on Project X and Project X failed, because that's not going to look good at their next review and they're not going to get whatever. But if you're building an environment like we do at VMware, we have a thing called X Labs, which is specifically built around this idea, where people come in with ideas in a startup model. And so we repeatedly do that. So at VMware, we have this model within the office of the CTO called X Labs, which is where we try new things. And more importantly, we expect things to fail. And so I think that's the failing fast thing. It's as much about expecting things to fail, having a culture that accepts failure as well as just failing as quickly as you can. So, fail fast typically talks about, we'll try lots of things and realize which ones don't work fast. But I think there's a next step to that. There's a sort of brutality to the ability to say, okay, fine, no, we're going to bet on something and know that if it fails, we'll go, okay, we learned something there. And that's really important. So, people who say, I've learned from my mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. And there's 100 cliches like that, right? And people who say, with the classic one, I've got more experience than you. No, I haven't. I've just made more mistakes. And trust me, I've made a lot in my life, and you learn from them, right? Yeah. So, to summarize a rather rambling answer I've just given you, I think it's trying to find ways in cultures where failure is not penalized, failure is not something that people are seen or looked down upon for, and almost build environments where failure is something that is acceptable, maybe even celebrated, and I think just the other thing, scientists is I've always considered myself to be an engineer and a scientist, and scientists are always willing to admit they're wrong when faced with better evidence, right? Or new evidence, or an experiment that disproves that. I think that's where people need to learn. In sort of our IT world, we're quite happy in most cases when someone comes on with a better tech to go, yeah, actually, this is wrong. We'll dump that. We'll move over and do this. I see where sometimes people get almost like religiously tied to something and rally around some kind of new future technology as being the next big thing. And quite often that's actually more painful, is sort of breaking people away from that cult of that particular technology and go, really, no, it's dead. We're not doing that anymore. Everyone's gone over here. So, fail fast can go much broader than just trying different things.
Yeah, the lessons that you learn are particularly important. So we've kind of looked at the past, and I think we like to think of ourselves, because we're looking at tech trailblazers and people who are going to be, making a difference in the enterprise tech space over the coming years. Mm-hmm. What would you say is going to be the future of enterprise tech? What are we going to see over the next 10 years?
My answer to always this is, I'm not very good at predictions. If I was, I wouldn't be here. I'd be on my massive super yacht in the middle of the Med right now. But if you want to look at more general trends as to what I think is going to happen, not specifically in technology, a particular technology, so to speak, but in terms of what's going to really make a difference. It was brought home to me yesterday, I was on a briefing with a financial institution. I won't tell you which one. And this financial institution was just absolutely, not only, I think, a bit full of people that like living in the past, but were almost complaining that their customers were wanting new funky stuff like instant payments and things like that. And you're like, that's the norm. And you could see them struggling because of what they built in their past, that they weren't able to move forward to the future. And so I think if you want to know the real challenge we have in enterprise IT always, is there is a shop of shiny stuff. All new, amazing, sexy stuff that everyone sees, and all the cloud vendors, and we go to all these wonderful shows, and there's this new way of doing this, and we've got microservices that, and serverless this, and whatever. And there is a huge gap between the huge array of shiny stuff and the stuff that enterprises are using on a daily basis to run their stuff. The gulf is massive in terms of skills, in terms of technology, in terms of everything. So really, if you want to know what's going to modernize and what's going to make a difference in the next 10 years, is almost dragging those people into the future by making it easy as possible for them. That's what I'm looking for specifically in my area. It's not, don't keep coming up with a new exciting way to do, Knative serverless this, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. What I'm looking for is, okay, well, how have you made that massively easy to consume by an enterprise? How have you made it easy for them not to have to go through a skills pain to be able to consume it? And have you made it such that it's quite easy for them to integrate it with their existing systems or modernize their existing systems to make the most of that? That's where there's some real difference going to happen. And there will be organizations that die in the next 10 years because they can't jump that gap. And the opportunity there to come in and do something amazingly inventive in that middle space, I think it is really where people they get so excited by I've got to come up with a new shiny thing. There's a huge value in taking a couple of the shiny things and productizing them. Use the Simon Wardley type of thing. Start to take that new.
Having throwbacks to his maps.
Yeah, exactly. But it's about that evolution from that sort of innovative down through to something that's productizing. That productizing bit in the middle. So what will the next 10 years hold for enterprise technology? It's going to be, as enterprises start to modernize or continue to, I say start to, we're always modernizing, right? Continue to modernize. It's how you're going to make it easy for them. That's the real challenge, because they all want to do it. They all see all the shiny stuff and say it's great. But if you've got some way of making it easy for them, you're going to, have your own super yacht in the Med.
Yeah. Well, and in some ways, we've had that over the last 12 months, haven't we? For example, of the adoption and digital transformation, because it forced people to perhaps move a lot faster than they had originally anticipated doing so.
Yeah, it's forced a cultural change. I think that's the important thing. I think a lot of the barriers to technology adoption in enterprises are people and process. They're not necessarily around technology. I've always said this. It's like, Godwin's law is any conversation about any conversation on the internet will, not Godwin's law. It is Godwin's law. Will end up being about someone accusing someone else of a Nazi. I think if I was going to come up with Baguley's law, it'd be any conversation about technology always ends up coming about people and process. And here we are again, right? So, what actually happened in the last 12 months was we didn't make any great leaps in technology. There's been no huge leaps in technology in the last 12 months, have there, right? What you've got is organizations that have said, no, we can't do things using technology X, have been forced to, and now it's become part of their core culture. So, Zoom hasn't suddenly got 10 times better in the last 12 months. It's not fundamentally different. There's a load of new features and stuff, but it's not fundamentally changed. Just people are now using it more. All these technologies, people have now decided actually they're acceptable to them. So the people and process have become accepted and forced to use these technologies. So, that's why it's been great for me. We've not seen a huge 12 months of invention. What we've seen is a huge 12 months of adoption of people changing their perception. I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of in the same vein, and perhaps the pandemic has also had an impact on this side of things as well, is what do you think in sort of 2030 or 2031, I guess we would be saying, what are startups going to look like? Are they going to have changed considerably? Are we going to see shifts in how they operate, how they raise funds, how they work into enterprise tech? I mean, I think.
Yeah. So the big thing for me comes back to what I talked about earlier, is the ESG side of things. I think you're going to look in 2031, there's going to be even more focus than there is now on sustainability, on social change, on a better world, full stop, et cetera, et cetera. So the opportunity and the inspection of technology will be far greater in 10 years in terms of its social and economic and environmental impact, I think, than it is now. So what's the world of startups going to look like then? It'll still be there. The money will still be around for VCs to invest in it, but they'll be looking far more to invest in something that's got ESG props than they would necessarily in high-tech cool. You see the point I'm saying here is that you're going to have to focus more in that area, certainly. You just have to look at all the companies laying out 2030 roadmaps that are probably a lot better thought through than the 2020 ones were, if you thought in 2010, and a lot more mature and much more around tech for good and all of those kind of areas. So I think, if I was looking now to say what would a VC is, maybe hopefully I'll be retired and advising more private equity firms than I do now. By then, we'll be looking more in that ESG space, definitely.
Yeah, good, fantastic. All good stuff. Well, hopefully we'll have some news with regards to that. I'm just thinking if there's anything else that you'd like to share, perhaps, that you've noticed over the last 12 months since we last spoke.
Yeah, there was this pandemic thing that happened.
What was that about?
I don't know, really. It's all sort of passing by. I just sat in my house.
Passed you by as you Zoomed with everybody.
Yeah, suddenly. I think, you want to talk about people in process. That's me. If you'd asked me 18 months ago, I would have said no. There's no possible way. I really hate doing, video conference presentations. I much prefer doing them in person. Now I've been forced to do them. I've realized the benefits of it in a huge way. And I think there's going to be a big flip. And I don't think we'll go back to huge in-person conferences quite as quickly as people want. It's going to take a few more years. So I think, to that perspective, in the context of something like Tech Trailblazers, in the context of someone who's a founder trying to do something cool and interesting and different, the next 3 years are going to be very, very different. It's not going to change back fast. So, whereas 2-3 years ago, if you were starting a company, I'd go, right, go hang out at some of the cool conferences, go get yourself a little stand or whatever it is, meet the right people, do the networking. That's going to be very hard for a few years to come. So we need to start looking at more different ways like this kind of thing and other ways too of allowing cool innovators such as the people that are entering into Tech Trailblazers to find those people that can make a difference for them and can bring them to market, whether that's by acquisition, investment, or whatever it is, or just by buying their product and using it. I think we need to find new and innovative ways of doing that. So maybe there's a Tech Trailblazers category in itself right there. What's the cool new way you can make startups more successful in the next 3 years or so? Because it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard.
Yeah. Although interestingly enough, we are looking at a couple of, and it's touched upon two of the areas that we've dwelled on or explored here during our conversation. So one of the categories is diversity trailblazers. So looking at people not just in startups, because obviously we have the male and the female, and part of that scorecard, if for want of a better word, is diversity as well as leadership, innovation, and agility. And the other is investment trailblazers. So looking at the kind of the financial element of a startup. Yep. So that could be VCs, that could be other types of private funding, that could be accelerators, that could even be, you know, people in government who are doing innovative stuff with the startup community. So, you know, watch this space with regards to those.
There's one more area I'd like to talk about, if I could, a little bit from a diversity perspective, particularly. Fundamentally, we have, you know, and something that's been close to my heart is mental health. And so I've been the sponsor of mental health here at VMware, and we've trained over 60 mental health first aiders in EMEA that were set up long before the pandemic, sort of 3 or 4 years ago, that have helped us hugely. So that's one thing I do want to highlight, is it's obviously come out as important going forward in terms of personal well-being, particularly. It's been highlighted as part of this pandemic. But the other thing that a lot of people don't think about, and I don't want to mention it in the same breath as mental health, I just want to separate it, is neurodiversity. And I'm seeing a rise in the recognition of neurodiversity as a diversity angle, I suppose, as a diversity topic within organizations. So people, obviously, if you talk about diversity at the moment, they talk about all the obvious diversity categories in terms of, you know, gender, or, you know, whichever gender you're identifying with, should I say, and or, you know, race, et cetera, et cetera. We actually have a veterans pod for ex-military at VMware that I'm one of the sponsors of as well, being ex-military. But neurodiversity is one that's very, very rising up. So we've been actually going through some neurodiversity hiring programs in the US, and recognizing that neurodiversity is very much something that needs to be looked at, understood, and further investigated and supported, so to speak, as people become more aware of the diversity of abilities and performance that people can have in various different areas based on their neurodiversity. So I think that's really important to understand. So it looks like we've got rid of what normal was in other categories. We're getting rid of what normal is in the neuro space as well, I think, which is really important, because if you, particularly in tech, you find a lot of people that would be considered neurodiverse in other industries, so to speak. It particularly tends to attract people that, you know, have autistic tendencies or ADHD or other things, you know, myself included, and people with Asperger's, et cetera, that in other industries wouldn't have done so well as they've done in tech. But I think recognizing, celebrating that, and understanding that is also a key part of the growth of our industry going forwards as we mature. So, you know, add that to that, the sort of DEI space is adding in neurodiversity. And that's a topic that's become close to my heart in the last couple of years. And it's something that we're focusing on a bit more heavily now at VMware in a broader way.
Definitely. So, I mean, there is something that I always used to say, oh, you know, they're on the spectrum. I said, we're all on the spectrum. It's called being a human being.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's, you know, neurodiversity, there is, everyone's somewhere on that spectrum, right? So, you know, you can all claim to be on it. That's fine. And that's great. But it's like the same thing is mental health. I heard someone talking about mental health being part of the disability organization. I said, mental health's not disability. Everyone's got mental health. It's the same as physical health, right? You know, I don't look at one of my employees who's got a broken leg and go, well, just get over it, will you? You know, it's the same. You know, we all have days when we feel bad physically, and we will have days when we feel great physically, and we equally, in mental perspective, we'll have days when we feel bad mentally and feel great mentally. And I think that on that side is worth understanding. And I think as we watch an industry start to mature and understand physical health, you know, mental health the same way as physical health. That's why, you know, we have physical first aiders, right, in organizations everywhere. Physical first aiders, you know, it's been trained for years, you know, the John's ambulance, all that kind of stuff, right? But the thing is, if you go to an organization, there's always people in that office that are first aiders. You know, they have the special badges and the lanyards or whatever it is, and they never get used, though. And why do they never get used? Because we put so much effort into physical safety and health and safety that people bemoan, that we very rarely need to call upon our physical first aiders in the workplace. And so all I try to do at VMware is try and say, well, can we not just swap the word physical for mental in that? So can I have mental health first aiders that, you know, when someone is having trouble mentally, we can signpost them to the right amount of help and where they get to go to get help. But at the same time, can we also look on how we do health and safety at work for mental health the same way that we do health and safety at work for physical work? How do I set up environments, cultures, spaces, just everything so that we can understand? I don't want to get to the point where people are injuring themselves mentally before they get picked up. I want to stop that before, just as we've done for physical health. So if you ask, you know, what's my crusade, is very much around that mental health space. It's around changing the way that people work and understanding the environments people work in to support good mental health, just like we support good physical health in what we do. So, I apologize to go into a bit of a rant at the end of the thing.
But I was just thinking about the example of being taught to pick up a box correctly. Because you can pick it up badly and injure yourself, and you can pick it up in the correct way, which, be safe. Or you also say that load is not suitable for one person. That should be spread across two people, for example. And people have resilience in certain aspects of their character, and some will be less resilient. And how do you help them build that resilience? And how do you ensure that you also look at the tasks or, missions that you give people and how you resource them? Because that's where stress usually comes from, isn't it?
I mean, my personal hobby, I do fireworks and stuff outdoors. And for that, we have to do various health and safety.
I'm a pyromaniac. I've known that for a long time.
Exactly. But one of those is I have to do a safe working at heights course, which is, how to work safely at heights. And no one's done me a safe working in high stress situations with customers shouting at you course, right? Those don't exist.
It's very useful, I would imagine, for a lot of people.
I don't tend to get it as much at VMware, but I have in my past. But, it's that kind of thing. I think it's almost looking at, and so we're putting in mental health courses for managers to enable them to start to not only recognize for, mental health symptoms and how to do it, but more importantly, how to run a team with an understanding of prevention as well. So there's flip sides to both of this. And I think it's really important that we as an industry, if I get the chance in this forum, thank you to do that, to say that we need to start talking a bit more openly about how we create places, not that are less stressful, because it's very difficult to work in a software sales company without having end of quarter stress successful. But I think less risky to mental health, I think, is the best way to put things.
Yeah,
because mental health is not about stress.
I mean, we all know that it's going to be potentially dangerous to dangle off a frame when you're fixing a firework or whatever you might be doing. But as long as you've got the safety equipment and you're well trained, then you should be fine, right? You significantly can only reduce the risk. That's the thing. You can reduce the risk to it being an acceptable risk, I think.
So let's think a bit more about how we reduce the risk of mental health problems in the workplace.
Yeah, and let's face it, startups are phenomenally stressful, or they can be. So
and as I said, mental health isn't just all about stress. There's lots of other there's huge elements to it too. So
it's everything. Absolutely brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Joe. It's been an absolute pleasure. Delighted that you could join us today for another Judges on Fire podcast. And if you'd like to find out more about the Tech Trailblazers, please do visit our website, which is www.techtrailblazers.com, or follow us on Twitter at Tech Trailblaze, so no R and no S at the end, or find us on LinkedIn. So thanks again, Joe, and hopefully you can join us again soon for another exciting conversation. Thank you.